are joined today by my longtime collaborator, one of my best friends in the whole world, priestess. Is it okay if I call you priestess?
Yeah, I don't call myself that, like, personally. However, because the word's gotten really co-opted by like social media kind of influencer priestess vibes.
Oh, yeah, but I just find you to be a
So
mystic.
I feel like it's one of those things that if somebody else calls you that, then it's great.
Yeah.
But it's kind of
space holder.
Yeah, no, you can call me that, but I'm not putting it in my IG bio.
Yeah. If you heard that voice, that was Alexandra Roxo.
And I'm just gonna serve it up real from the start.
Yeah, we're just. She's always been serving up real from the start. You may have checked out her episode here on Mom Curious about a year and a half ago, where she was in a totally different place in life. She was writing her book, Dare to Feel, which is her second book that's out right now. I had the pleasure of listening to the audiobook, which she narrates. I loved every single second. What you may not know is that Alexandra is also a new mother.
I am.
How old is the baby now?
She'll be 3 months on the 27th, which is in 2 days from where we are now. So she's acting like a 3-month-old.
Is she? Yeah.
She's like having full conversations with cooing sounds with us all the time. Now, when we lay her on her back on the bed, she's like, knows that's her conversation space. And so she'll just start talking like, I'm like, do all babies do that?
Not all babies do that. My son did it more than my daughter, but that's your child.
Yeah, she's
got a lot to say. But everyone, it's crazy because they have their own personalities from the very start.
Yeah. No, she's fiery.
Is she?
Yeah. When like I'm nursing her and if I like try to like pet her or something, she just like pushes my hand away. She's like, girl, I'm trying to eat.
I love it so much. Boundaries from the start.
She has good boundaries.
She has good boundaries?
Yeah. But then she's also really sensitive and she needs me when she needs me. She's a Scorpio.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's it like being in the middle of your 4th trimester, right? That's what they call it. Very beginning. And putting out your book baby out into the world. Is it a weird thing to call it a book baby now that you have a real baby?
No.
No.
I mean, it's a lot. It's like, so my first book, Fuck Like a Goddess, felt like this book around how as women we reclaim our voices, we make peace with our sexuality and do the healing that all of us have a necessity for there and with our bodies. And it felt like, here's the spiritual, psycho-emotional kind of look at these collective imprints that we've gotten as women, most of us. You know, some people escape those through however, I don't know. But
I don't know either.
But most women kind of have dealt with at some point in their life issues around their body, around their voice. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Is my sexuality too much? Is it either do I have to pick to be a virgin or a whore, kind of an archetype? Because that was what was taught to me in a religious context. So my first book was kind of like, get right with me, find my empowered voice, but from a very spiritual lens. So not just like find my feminist voice or something like that, but find a wholeness in my body so that I could essentially show up to life and to a partnership and to a family, not from a place where I am like sort of dragging like my fears and insecurities and addictions and stuff. Not that those things go away, but I wanted to have done some of the cleanup around it and some of the reclaiming around it.
Yeah, but you know what's really cool about you, and you've been this way from the very beginning, that when you do something for you, you almost immediately, in the right time, share it with others. Because you can tap into a sort of collective narrative, identity experience through your own self, which I really value in you as an artist and as a healer.
Yeah, thank you. And that book came right on the heels of like Me Too. And a lot of women, I think, I know because it's done really well, that book. A lot of women have responded to it. Like, I needed to hear this. I needed to look at these places in my own journey. But then this book is kind of like, okay, now that I'm like feeling more empowered, I'm accepting my sexuality. I don't think I'm too much anymore. I'm not fighting my body to be skinny or whatever the hell. So now what? Now I would like to be a partner and
Live.
I would like to, I'd like to live from here, right? Like a normal human life. No big deal, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to have a
I mean,
family.
what's funny is like your normal human life is pretty epic. Just like,
Well,
which is kind of like the premise of the book, you guys. Like
No.
her normal human life, you're an artist. You are an artist. You are a seeker. You are an adventurer. I mean, these stories are, and I was there for so many of them as a witness and as a participant, and they really are fucking fun. It's
Thank
really
you.
kind of cool actually knowing you all this while, like, but knowing now this next chapter that, like, you know, I just finished the audiobook and this sort of is like a postscript almost to know like this is the next adventure, and it seems so like normal to the rest of the world, like, oh, you have a baby and you have a love, a partner. And I know that it has taken you so much soul searching, so much giving, so much living to get to this point to make this your art and your adventure.
Yeah. Well,
This is a huge accomplishment.
It is. And I mean, I want to give a distinction because it's not just any type of partnership, right? It's like there are partnerships that if I would have married, let's say my 25-year-old boyfriend had a family, I could have had that now, but I would have been in a completely toxic relationship. We would have been both dealing with like toxic patterns, codependency, addictive patterns, etc. And I chose, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. You know, some people do that and they get divorced and then they do the work on themselves and then they find someone at another place in their life. But for me, I decided not to make that big step until I felt a sense of wholeness and healing within myself. And maybe some people don't even need to do that healing. Some people don't have as much of a curriculum to heal. Like, that's fine. I mean,
Or to the degree that maybe some of us, and we both share this, do.
yeah.
But I do think that there is something, you're an oracle of sorts in that you did need to do all that healing. You did need to do all that living,
wanna pass
all
it
that
on.
laughing, all that crying.
Well, the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like you needed that.
Yeah.
And that was your timeline.
Yeah.
Almost in order to report that to the reader.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
I love
as the sort of leader, you know, you're like, here's the path, gal. You want to walk it with me? I have the balls, for lack of a better word. I have the ovaries to get through it. And you can too. I'll chart the path ahead.
Yeah.
That's how I felt reading the book. And I also just want to say that it was so fun just going through the streets of New York with you.
Oh,
like
there's a lot of New York stories in the book.
Yeah.
And it's just like a lot of stories on facing those shadows in the heart, facing the pain, facing the discomfort, which we can do and like in partnership, outside of partnership, whatever. Like we all have stuff. We all have patterns. Making it adventure, not making it like, oh God, this is awful. It's like, oh no, like I'm experiencing my own, let's say, fears or doubts or insecurities, but I'm also having an adventure while I'm knowing myself.
And
not,
make it artful. Really,
not being a victim of it, I guess, is the other piece. It's just like, yeah, that's where I was at, right? Like, let's say dating people that weren't like up to par with my heart standards and like saying yes, let's say, to a bunch of men who were a no.
Wait, speaking of no, there's a character in your book, Noah, who I knew personally, who I loved and who loved you so well. And I just was so glad to see her expressed that way. It brought me to tears. It really did. That love was so healing and epic and an adventure.
Yeah.
And it's so cool because, you know, we think of moms as like, I don't know, like, I don't
think
not
that they
cool.
haven't like they haven't had a bunch of like lovers, men, women, trans, traveled around the world. Like, but I guess not. I mean, not everybody has, but I actually really wanted to like live before. Not that I'm not saying it to be judgmental at all, like but I wanted to explore before becoming a mom.
I think you represent a large portion of the population because we are having children later in life for a reason.
Yeah.
Not just to make money, not just to have a career, although those are valid. But I do think that now that we have the technology to put off pregnancy until we're ready, you know, I know that's a whole conversation, but we do for now. But
I didn't use technology.
You didn't use birth control?
Oh, that kind of technology. I'm like, what technology are you talking about?
But some people. Okay, we're talking about birth control. We're talking about abortions. We're talking about
yes, that.
We're talking about abstinence if need be. Okay. We're talking about freezing your eggs. We're talking about surrogacy. You know, so we talk about that on the show quite a lot, that we have a lot of options. And I think that those options allow women to say, you know what, I have a life I want to live.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that I don't want to continue to live my life as a mother, but it is inevitably going to change. Look, you're here with your almost 3-month-old and you're like, wow, it's a lot to see what New York City is on this little system. I'm glad I didn't have to see it for a while until now. I got to like really enjoy New York on my system.
Right.
Me.
Right. Yeah.
But you wanted to live. You wanted to live and you wanted to make art.
And like, you're right. A lot of women are choosing that nowadays and choosing to go out and have adventures. Like, we didn't maybe see our moms do that so much.
No, my mom was 19 when she had her first child.
Yeah. My mom was 27, but she had a few good adventures, I think. But I don't think she had a lot of lovers or, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah. So, I mean, everybody's path is so different. So different.
Yeah.
What I do see sometimes is like women who are maybe more like me, who are like, oh, I want to like live my dreams, have a big career, like travel, have lots of lovers. And then being like, oh shit, now I want a kid. And now I don't have a person, or now I'm, you know, quote unquote, past the date or whatever. I see that happen a lot, and it's painful. And I thought that was going to be me. I thought that
in the last conversation that we had on this show, there was a pain pocket that we were exploring together around not knowing if it was possible to be in partnership and having a baby. I mean, there was a real longing for you even just a year and a half ago. Can you imagine what a different life you're leading right now?
Totally.
It can change quickly.
They
say in the 12 steps, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly.
Yeah.
But it can be quick like that.
Yeah.
And I see a huge change.
Yeah. I had to have a moment where it was like, okay, I'm admitting in myself that I really want this thing that is quote unquote so normal, that the part of me that was so
boring,
fringe, was like, oh no, I don't need to do that whole traditional family thing right now, because like I've got all these projects going on.
Which are fun. The projects are fun. But it turns out the project of family is also fun.
It is. It
is. Can you tell me more about it? How's it going?
No, I mean, it's I'm so happy that I did it. And I feel for my friends that didn't do it, you know, and that aren't able to have that. And I feel for women who are in that place. And you can come hang out with me and my baby anytime.
And you can listen to this show and know that, by the way, you know, there are other
options.
There's fostering, there's adopting, there's surrogacy, there's so a lot of you know, there's egg freezing if you feel like that's something that's necessary. There are options for people, and that doesn't mean that there isn't pain involved in that too. But you know, you talk about your miscarriage in the last chapter of the book, and there is pain. Yeah, there is pain. That the experience of being alive is
painful. Yeah, and I can't hold everybody's heart in that, though I do wish I could, you know. Because I feel that, because I felt after I had a miscarriage, I was like, well, what if I can't get pregnant, you know? And the miscarriage was just so painful. Like
I was on the phone with you.
Yeah.
I remember your screams of pain so vividly.
Yeah.
And so many people go through it.
Yeah.
So many people go through it. And I'm so moved that you kept going. Yeah. You know, somehow you did keep hope. Somehow you did.
I did for a few more years, for like 2 more years, and we weren't trying during that time, but we were kind of getting on the same page if we wanted to commit to each other in this way, because the miscarriage, that pregnancy was an accident. It wasn't an accident in a way, because it kind of made me go, wait a minute, it's time to get this show on the road if I really want this.
I had the same experience.
You did?
Yeah. When I had a miscarriage, I was like, that was an accident, and I was actually okay with the miscarriage itself, but I was like, I really want this, and I felt the soul contract between me and Dan, which isn't always the case, but I felt it strongly.
Yeah, I felt ours too.
And then I wanted a child. Yeah.
Did you guys have like healing that had to happen
So much healing
after that miscarriage?
I had healing that had to happen after that miscarriage, during the pregnancy, after the pregnancy, during the second pregnancy, after the second pregnancy. Yes.
Yeah.
For me, and you were talking about this, like, and I don't know, I it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Healing, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a stop and start and pick up, put down, pick up, put down. But I do think that you're right that, in the experience of reading your book, there was a lot that was cleared in your 2 books. There was a lot that was cleared before this soul came through you.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so glad.
I'm
so glad that I was able to do that healing work. I remember kind of like when I was pregnant the first time before I miscarried, and my partner and I were having a big fight. And I remember thinking, I do not want to pass this on to our child, because I saw my parents fight and be passive aggressive, resentful,
divorced.
And I was like, that, I don't want to do that to someone. I know what it feels like to be on the other end of that. And so that wasn't the appropriate time for me to become a mother, because we were still needing to get through a bunch of our own bullshit.
And isn't it amazing that like the babies know it?
Yeah. And I remember thinking, is this baby not going to stay, because we are just not ready to become parents?
The baby that...
No, the first pregnancy.
Right.
Yeah. No, and when we got pregnant this time, we were solid. We felt so clear. This is what we want. We have been in therapy and really sat with each other and are like, okay, this is what I'm bringing. This is what you're bringing. I now know. We know the patterns that play out. We can approach them from a non-reactive place now. There's so much, so much of my deepest childhood stuff came up in the first 2 years of our relationship, because I felt so safe.
Yeah, for maybe like the first time.
Yeah.
I remember talking to you about that the first time you came on the show, about how this like love was really radiating towards you, like, and how it just like illuminates the shadow.
Yeah.
And that is what love does.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens with the child. They look at you and you are their everything. You are their world. They trust you completely. And sometimes for many women that can feel really overwhelming and scary. I'm glad to hear that's not the case for you right now.
I mean, not yet, though. I have heard from you, and I have heard from like my mentors and stuff, like, yeah, you're going to have to go through some of the wounds that you experience at different ages of your life are going to return as your daughter is in those ages.
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely like, not looking forward to that so much.
You're the one who told me, I was nursing Paz, my daughter, my second child. And I took a picture and I was like, I want to be doing a ceremony with you. I think you were doing something cool. And you were like, this is your ceremony. This is your retreat. This is your spiritual evolution. And I will never forget that, that you reflected that back to me. And I think there was a part of you that also really wanted to be a mother.
Yeah.
Even then.
Totally. It's like, I could be off gallivanting and living my, independent, spiritual, empowered, women lifestyle. And then a part of me was like, wait, I actually long for this really human really
experience.
experience. And I have felt in the experience of just nursing and having my daughter sleep on me, like this is the deepest meditation.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
So fucking good.
Yeah. And I just like want to enjoy it because I know it's gonna move quickly.
Yeah. My son's nearly 7. I still cuddle with him to go to bed.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is annoying, but but sometimes, quickly, sometimes slowly. It's a weird thing time.
Yeah.
It's a holy thing.
Yeah.
In Judaism, they say b'sha'a tova when you get pregnant. They say in a good time. That's when babies come through. I really feel that for you. Do you feel that for your book baby too?
I mean, it's kind of like right at the same time as actually, few months postpartum was kind of intense. But honestly, it feels like time to release it into the world. And it was like, it's the stories of the things that we work through in order to have the opening of the intimacy and the love or the dreams coming true. And so the book is really like how we're moving through those heart wounds, those heart shadows, those places where we want to close down, we don't want to open up, even to people we love. Even if you're married, the same thing can happen where you're like, oh yeah, we're good, we love each other so much, but then you're like not really connecting, you're not really stopping and pausing, you're letting these little hurts kind of get between you. So it's not, they can manifest, these heart kind of wounds can manifest in all our relationships, friendships, family.
Yeah.
They're the same patterns that we likely saw given to us by our parents and society.
I love that you say that.
Yeah, that we just pass on. So we can stop and go, okay, I'm going to actually kind of look into the alchemy of why does this keep happening, right? Why do I keep doing this? Or why do I keep numbing? Or why do I keep avoiding? And for me, that's the beauty. It's like, that's where we get to sort of open our heart to a whole new level. Because I could be sitting with my daughter and she's gorgeous and beautiful, like full of love, and I could be completely not present.
Yeah.
I could be closed, I could be numb, I could be avoiding. So it's not in having a family or a partner that it's like, great, everything's fabulous. No, you're still you, despite
wherever you go, there you are.
Right, exactly. And so in Dare to Feel, it's like, well, where are we not fully being real with ourselves? And I share that through my own stories where I'm like, here's where I lied to myself.
Yeah, I mean, you're an epic storyteller, but what I loved about the book also is that the stories are coupled with action. So at the end of every one of your own personal, really fun stories, we have actionable steps to, sit with our own life story.
Yeah, so every story has reflection after, so you have that you could write about, or you could just contemplate, like writing prompts, reflection prompts, and a ritual for you to do. So you could bring something into your body in a way by sitting and either having some sort of a meditation or a little exercise that I give you too.
How did you come to those exercises, by the way? I know a lot of them actually were inspired by our time in acting school together, which I think is so beautiful. And you really give a great nod to Stella Adler for, tapping you into your feeling body all those years ago. But where did you get all these beautiful rituals?
I mean, I just write them. I just, as an artist, as a creative person, I just write them. I just call them forth out of me. I'm also a product of my world and environment. So as any artist is, right, we're influenced by everything we read, learn, experience. So.
And you sit in ceremony with yourself? You do these practices?
I've done all kinds of practices.
What's your favorite these days? Actually, what's your favorite as a mother? Let's get specific, because if there are new baby mommies out there, it's not so easy. I mean, you look so glam right now. But we were laughing in the bathroom like this is such a treat, because you have a teeny tiny baby. Who has time to get glam except for on the off day?
The thing that's been saving me in these few months has been my sensual embodiment practice, which is super simple.
Great, let's go.
Which is just put on one song that helps me feel sexy, sensual in my body. put on one song, go lay on the floor, first just breathe, and then just start to notice my body and start to move really slowly to the song. Just slowly. And it's like, it's not a yoga practice, it's not Pilates, but I get to just move my body. Now, you don't have to worry about like what you look like. And it also could be in the shower that you put on a song that you feel really good in your body with, and you're in the shower and the music is playing and you're sudsing up your body and you're just like with yourself and feeling yourself, and just for me just to feel I can't give that up.
Senses.
Yeah, I can't give up my
senses.
sensuality or my desire to feel like a woman, to feel like an embodied woman who like feels good in her skin.
So many people lose that in that fourth trimester, and for absolutely understandable reasons. Like there's always this talk about how, my body is not my own.
Right.
For a long time when you're incubating a human life, delivering it to the world, you're welcome world. And then also, you're your baby's sustenance.
Yeah.
You're her nervous system.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you offer that, but that you do that for yourself. Like as your friend, I'm like so glad that you still own your skin.
Yeah. I mean, like my last weekend, I think it was, my partner is like sitting in the chair holding our daughter, and I was like dancing for them,
Cute.
Yeah. And
how's it going between the two of you guys?
Great. I mean, I feel like I fell so deeply in love on another level with him when I saw him become a dad.
I know, it's really hot, actually.
It is. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And like we don't have any time. Like the other night she fell asleep, and we're co-sleeping, which I'm happy to talk about. But but because we're co-sleeping, like she sleeps in the middle of us a lot. And so for the first time in a long time, I was like, oh, wait, she's asleep. I can go around the bed and just go snuggle with him for a second. Because we hadn't been doing that. Our focus has been on her so much. And like he just held me in his arms for like 5 minutes. And it was such a, I missed that so much. Just because she's always on one of our bodies. Yeah.
She's so small.
She is.
She's so small.
And she just likes to be held. She does not like to be.
She's your daughter.
I mean, really.
Yeah. She's a queen too. She's like dictates everything that we do.
Great.
So if we sit down when she's having like a little bit of a fussy moment, and then she's like, meh. So we have to stand back up. But I'm like, she's just bossing us around.
Yeah, she is. That's what they do.
That's what they do.
Yeah, that's their job.
Yeah. Yeah. But I really enjoy co-sleeping, and I feel like I it's not for everyone, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, but the amount of love and the amount of intimacy that I've been able to experience with my daughter, and to be able to give her the security that maybe I didn't have in the same way. Though my mom has now told me, she's like, yeah, sometimes I'd let you sleep in the bed, and like, it was just really sweet. But we tried putting her in a bassinet, and she just would wail and wail and wail. And I'm like,
and it made sense.
Yeah, it made sense for us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at a certain age and we have space, and we're like really aware. And not once have I missed one of her cues, like in terms of her getting upset in the middle of the night. Or I thought Eli's a deeper sleeper. I thought, what if he rolls onto her or something? He's just never, like, he's so aware. We're both aware. And I think that's part of it. Is like, for people that have a certain amount of awareness and that are healthy and that aren't, there's all these like kind of stipulations.
Sure.
And it's something that you have to want to do.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And be able to do, actually.
Right. Yeah.
And have the support around you. I know that you have a real community around you who either are parents or are spiritually minded. And so like you have people who can talk to you about co-sleeping and co-regulating and all this sort of stuff in a way that, here in New York City, that the pediatricians are just like, sleep train them right away. And let's just say the first time around for me, that was really hard. And the second time around, I decided to co-sleep with my daughter because that was better for me. But there are some people who have to wake up in the morning and
Totally.
they really can't sleep,
Yeah.
you know, soundly. And
Yeah.
what I really appreciate about you is that you're always willing to share and teach with a caveat that this is what works for you.
Totally.
Always. And I admire that about you. I cherish that about you because I think you are different to a lot of the spiritual teachers, authors in your field where you have enough humility to say, this is my life experience and I want you to take what's good for you.
Right. Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So much.
I think it's really obnoxious when people try to push their point of view onto other people without even just acknowledging, wow, I don't know who I'm even telling what to do. Like, I'm telling someone what to do who I don't know. I don't know their background. I don't know their trauma. I don't know their religion. I don't know what country they come from. And I'm giving them all the same formula on how to be.
Upsetting. It really is so upsetting. And I think it's really like, I like look at the brain rot happening around us. And you talk really openly about your like screen use and you give a lot of suggestions in your book, which I appreciate. You're like,
to get people to like go out and live their life again.
I know. And you inspire us to live our lives with your stories because, you know, in all those stories, you're not, you know, scrolling on Instagram. No. You're running down the hall naked screaming.
at a hotel in Berlin. That was really fun.
You know, I really appreciate that because I think that we're seeing a real shift in society. And you give us a heads up like, babes, life is happening.
I find myself right there, like being on my phone and going, wait a minute, when's the last time that I like had an adventure or that I just like took a walk without my phone or that I struck up a conversation at a cafe. In New York City, there's so much opportunity, and I think that
almost too much sometimes. I think it can be overstimulating. You were just saying about your own daughter. It's like it can be really, really overstimulating for adult nervous systems too. So we just sort of shut off and go into our phones and But in the rest of the country or the world, like you have to make an effort to really connect with someone.
Yeah.
Put down your phone. After this episode. If I may, you do mention your mom and her struggles and how that impacted you, your dad too. But I'm wondering, how has motherhood colored your view of your own mother in the past 2+ months? I mean, it's literally been 2 months. So
I feel so much more gratitude towards both of my parents than. I'm just like, oh my God, they changed my diaper like 8 times a day.
Yeah.
You guys, that is just huge. The fact, if you hate your parents or if you love them and you have a troubled relationship with them, or if you talk to them or don't talk to them, just remember they were changing your diaper 8 times a day.
I know. It's so hard to hear for some people who are in the midst of what you talk about in the book, which is really
deep
healing that trauma, but it is so true. Oh my God, the perspective on.
And my dad has been so sweet now. He's like, oh, I was up with you in the middle of the night. I used to rock you in the rocking chair when you were just crying. I would be on the international flights to Brazil because my dad's Brazilian, and I'd be walking you up and down the aisle. And it's so humbling because I'm like, you know, even if they have both driven me crazy at certain moments, and maybe your parents have too if you're listening, but they still had to do that deep devotional loving, you know, for those years. And that's a lot of time just focused on you, right?
Yeah.
So I have more love and respect for them. And, you know, we still had a lot of healing to do.
Yeah. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. It's such a humbling experience to be a mother.
Yeah.
You know? I'm so glad that you guys had that connection.
Yeah.
It's really sweet, all those stories about your Brazilian side, by the way. That's the one part of your life that that I'm reading about that I just didn't know so much about.
Yeah.
All those summers in Brazil.
Yeah. One thing that, you know, Brazil really impacted me in a way that I talk about in my first book, which is just like that I grew up half in this society that allowed women's sexuality, if not over sexualize them in a particular type of a way. Brazilian like feminine sexuality and feminine embodiment is so specific. So specific to the extent that now, you know, I grew up in like the 90s, but now like Brazilian butt lifts and Brazilian bikinis and Brazilian waxes, like all that came from a culture that like I grew up in before any of that stuff was over here. But so then I would be in Brazil and in the summer with my family, and this really kind of like, you're supposed to be sensual and you're supposed to be embodied in this like very specific way as a woman. Now I come back to the States and like none of that was okay in Georgia, in the Protestant Christian South that I was a part of. And so that I always had this kind of tug inside of me of like my, you know, kind of like British ancestor, Irish ancestor side, and then the Brazilians, which came from, you know, Portugal and Spain, but the Brazilian culture is such a mix of African culture and indigenous culture and those European colonizer cultures. And anyway, so that's a huge,
and the language itself really does shape the mind
and it's
body, spirit.
It's such a beautiful language.
I really connected with you on that. You make a point to say like, you look white and you're
I definitely
half
super white.
But culturally you are Brazilian half, and there's this sort of tug and pull around like the way you present to the world and what like your family DNA, but also your family culture is. And I really appreciated that, because like what the world sees isn't necessarily what's going on the inside.
Right. Latin American, I feel like culture is so vast, right? Because you're putting all these countries that were colonized by Spain and Portugal and like have a mix of indigenous culture and African culture and then like the European culture. So they're all in this kind of Latin American bucket, right? And yet when we say Latin American, we know kind of like we have a feeling, right? Like
we have a visual in our mind.
Yeah, a visual for sure. Yeah, a visual, and I definitely don't fit that. But I mean, I guess it depends on a certain day. But we
your
also,
teachings do reflect that.
Yeah, and I think
this sort of indigenous quality, this sort of earth quality, even just like even the teaching today when you talked about being in the shower and connecting to your sensuality, and you know there is something about your Brazilian heritage, your father's culture, that really infuses your adventurous spirit.
Totally. Well, also, I mean, I do so much work with women and so much embodiment work and so much like I love supporting women to be in their sensual body and to be open-hearted and to feel passionate. And the passion and the sensuality comes from that. It does not come from my English and Irish white predecessors, you know, who were like buttoned up. The wounds come from that. So many wounds around.
But also, what about your intellect? Come on, I'm not saying that necessarily doesn't come from your Brazilian.
You're gonna get some comments on that one.
But I mean, but there are some. What about your intellect? What about like, you know?
No, it's true.
Even
my dad is not known for being an intellectual, right? But he's known for being a passionate Brazilian lover. Yeah. So I've heard from all of the women.
Yeah, but also, you talk about that.
And there's a story in the book.
It's a great story
about hearing him have loud sex, but
hearing him have loud sex and like throwing a glass. It was so beautifully written. Oh my God. It's a little
heartbreaking story.
It's heartbreaking, and it was also like where that Rumi quote about the cracks, and that's where the light comes in.
Totally.
And he's, you know.
But my mom's side, yes, my mom's actually very, very smart. She's like Mensa smart. I got the smarts from her.
And you do have the smarts, babe.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. You definitely have the smarts, and there are a lot of other things that I know, you know, that
but you
that
can
Protestant white heritage does offer you for sure. I just wanted to highlight that part of you because I related to it, that and your Noah character, because she's Israeli. I just, that feistiness that you talk about even in your daughter,
I know.
you know, that you enjoy, that you love, that you see in all of us. You're like, I see the glimmer.
Well,
I
the
see
thing
it
is,
in you
women,
over Zoom.
Yeah, you can be a woman who has all of that. You don't have to choose being smart or being, you know, kind of like put together. You can also be passionate and sensual and adventurous. You know, you can also be like, you know, I say this tongue in cheek, but like a little slutty, even in your own private marriage or monogamy, right? And I
Or
think,
not.
or not, or beyond that. But for me, there's a space of being able to have a multi-dimensional robustness as a woman, that I still feel like is new. We don't see a lot of women who are like, oh, I'm going to claim all these parts of me. I'm going to embody all these parts of me. I can be super spiritual and super devotional, super pious, connected to either a religious or spiritual background. I can be that. I can have that. And I can also be super sensual, super passionate as a lover. I can adore my ass and my thighs and shake them, you know, and I can also be really fucking smart. That we don't see that so much embodied.
Well, you know? You embody that.
Oh, thank you. And then you can add on to that. Like, I can also be a boss in my work, right? But we've been taught so much that we have to kind of compartmentalize, and we have to be, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It can be very confronting to be in a spiritual context and someone comes in there and they're fucking sexy and emboldened in their sexuality, right? Like, that can be really confronting, or vice versa.
Well, I noticed that your husband, I called him your husband.
A lot of people have been calling him my husband.
Your baby daddy.
Eli.
We're super nonconformist around certain things, but we'll see if we buy into that one in the next few years. I'll be inviting you if we do.
I know, duh. But there was a moment when you were having your blessing way around, you know, your pregnancy, and I thought, they're not going to have a wedding. I have to go to, this is the thing. But maybe you are going to have a wedding. Maybe. You love a party.
I love a party. We can have
read the book. You'll see how much he loves a party. Just think about that sex party scene. It's great. It's great. It's a great one. But speaking of the sex party scene, it's like your partner is not, he's not intimidated by the fullness of your life and your loving and your intellect. Look how confused you look, even by my mentioning that he would be intimidated by your power.
You one time, I'm going to tell this little story. So one time I was visiting my dad, and my dad looked at me and he said, do not ever tell a man that you have been bisexual or dated women, because he won't date you, or he won't want to have a baby with you. And I thought, excuse me? Right? But it really sat with me. I was like, this is coming from like a very, you know, kind of alpha masculine perspective. Also, my dad is born in 1941. But I was like, it really struck me. I thought, what if?
And also, your dad is your dad. That's
I know.
Your father.
I know. Of course he's going to say, I know.
No, but I mean, like, it's to you as his child, you're like, that's the word of God. You know,
totally. And I'm like, okay, basically you're telling me I'm not lovable to a straight, normative, white kind of a guy, whatever. Not white, but whatever. A straight guy. I'm not.
You're talking about Eli. That's
I'm talking about Eli. He happens to be white and straight. But I'm not lovable, let's say, if I tell this potential partner that I have had a checkered past. Like, that's the word that just popped into my brain, which would be the voice of my father. Sure. Would, you know, be like, oh.
I'm so glad you published a book about it. I think about it, and I'm like, I get really like embarrassed. Wow, that's the word I was going to use. Embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh, the world knows so much about me. You know, my parents, what do they think? And I read your book, and I was like, they think I'm badass. You know, like, that's really a beautiful thing that you owned your life story and you shared it for the betterment of womenkind, certainly. But as we know, if we elevate women, we also elevate men. I just think I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you owned that you transcended that narrative around your sexuality, around your love. This story about Noah and all of your girlfriends. I loved that part of your life.
Yeah, there were only 2 girls.
I was sure you were a lesbian, just for the record. I was like, this woman does not like men. What are you talking about?
It wasn't a phase, but I've just
wasn't a phase.
No, it's just always just been about the love and the connection and not necessarily having it. And that's just a part of my sort of non-conformist, like expansive soul, I think. And yeah, and then it was funny because then I met my partner now, who's like from New Hampshire, like he's like
he's so normal in a lot of ways, and also
I know,
epic.
And he's super fringe, not like.
But the fact that he can hold all of you, I think that we have to. I know you looked at me like I was crazy, but and it should be looked at like it's crazy. But for the rest of the world, like there are a lot of men who are intimidated by.
Right, that's what you had asked me.
The fullness of
I
your
was terrified,
expression, and you being in partnership with a man like Eli, who will get up in the middle of the night with your child, who can read your book and say, babe, I love it, and I'm here for you for your book launch in New York, and I'm here with the baby, and go get your makeup done, and like, I just think it's notable.
Yeah. He's amazing.
It's the thing. It's the next chapter. It's the next book. That this is notable. This normal life is really also really big.
Yeah. I was scared though for him to know things about me. I thought it'd be too much. It played into my narrative of I'm too much, which I talk about a bunch in both of my books. And so I wasn't sure, am I going to be too much for him? And then I found out that he's had a completely wild life. And I'm like, all right, you've done some crazy shit. Cool. Mine isn't crazy shit, but it's just I've lived, I've tried things, I've experimented, etc., which I think is becoming the norm, or it already is the norm now, versus 20 years ago when we were in college. It wasn't the norm, right? Like how many queer people did we know?
We knew them, but they were closeted.
Yeah,
which is crazy. I just think about should I change their names? I think about some of the guys in our
yes. Don't say their names, just in case.
I'm so glad you changed names in your book, by the way, because I'm like, I should do that more often. But like like the guys in our class who are in an acting studio, like. In NYU, where like we didn't care if they were gay or straight or bi or asexual, we didn't care. Totally closeted 20 years ago,
right?
And I'm sure it still goes on now. I'm sure that still goes on now.
I don't know. I feel like the Gen Zs are really, really different than us millennials. I was at a pole dancing class in Florida where we recently moved the other day. This is my first postpartum thing.
I love the start of this.
Yeah, I'm like postpartum. I'm gonna go do a workout class. Let me go to a pole class, and it was like all Gen Zs except me and my friend. And there was this trans guy, Gen Z, huge high heels on. He was like, "Do you guys mind if I film?" And my friend was like, "Oh, I'm not really into it." And then I was like, "Oh, I don't know. This is my friend." And he said, "You can just say no."
Wow.
And I just felt like, oh, right. They come from a generation where they can just own their needs. Whereas like for us, like women, people
so many
pleasing.
Words. So many words. That
so hard to have a need or a boundary. I just thought, oh God, how embarrassing that here I am at nearly 40 and I'm like not able to I felt bad. I didn't want to like ruin his video. I didn't want him to not be able to record his routine because of me, so that's where my mind is going. Whereas I felt like he was like, no, if you don't want to be in the video, I'll just record from over there.
I'm really so glad that you say that, because sometimes I get really nervous for Gen Z. And like any
there's other things.
Sure. Like any other generation, there's going to be good and there's going to be bad. Yeah. That's just how it goes. Okay, speaking of the next generation, what do you wish for your daughter?
God, I really, really wish for her that
we're opening up the portal, so just go for
it. Yes, please. I want TikTok and all that stuff to be done. I don't want the filters. I don't want her to think about Instagram face. I don't want her to be face tuning her face or her body. I don't want her to be looking to people like, I'm sorry to say, I'm just going to say social media influencers as her idols. Like, I would really like that to be done with. By the time
we sealed up that
phase
contract with
where like 16-year-olds are getting like, you know, filler in their face and stuff like that. Like, I don't want her to have to deal with that, and having to potentially deal with like her sexuality or being so onlineified, if that's a word, digitalized, because I didn't have to deal with that, and I would have gotten in so much trouble for being exploratory and adventurous as a woman. Like, I would have gotten in so much trouble as a teenager if people had a phone around. And I hope that there's a way that we get through this kind of phase in the youth, that it doesn't get worse as opposed to better. I mean, some of the things I'm reading, there's like AI digital girlfriends that sound like something out of Blade Runner, you know, which, you know, it's like millions of guys are signing up for right now to have this kind of virtual relationship and this kind of thing. So my fear is that we're going to dive further into technology, and that real life and like to swim in the ocean and to like, you know, hike a mountain or something is going to be super boring for kids. Like, that's my fear.
You know what I love about the way you use Instagram, and it has really propelled your career forward in a major way. And but I love that you use it as a sort of commercial for hiking and swimming and lovemaking and like, you know, you're
let
like,
me remind you how cool it is to just like get naked and get in the water.
Be alive.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, my dude is really great at that. And like, when we first were falling in love, we would like go hiking and like take off our clothes in the woods and like put on a speaker and dance and like drink tequila in the middle of the trees and like laugh and, you know, just like have an adventure. Stop the car at the side of the road and just like make love. You know.
So this is still I mean, the past 2+ months, maybe not, but even you've been having adventures with your man. Yeah. Even through pregnancy. You were climbing
totally.
mountains at, was it, 8 months pregnant?
Yeah, we went to France and we hiked and we did a pilgrimage to Mary Magdalene together, which he was so loving to come do with me. And we just keep having fun adventures, and that's one of the things that I love about him is like, he's wild and he does not want to be domesticated as a man or a father. I mean, it's tough. We get into a lot of fights around this relationship because his idea of what's safe and my idea of what's safe physically are so different. Right. During my blessing way, we had a bunch of friends kayaking in this gorgeous crystal spring, and he's there swimming next to an alligator. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, trying not to have a heart attack. So, you know, there's stuff like that where I've had to really walk the edge. He'll like climb up to like a literal edge. And I'm just like, I'm not doing that.
I know, because it's different when you have a child. All of a sudden you're like,
oh, but I was already like, but I'm glad that he's that and not like the guy who's like on his phone all the time and like barely, you know, playing video games or something like that. Yeah. You know, I appreciate his wildness. I appreciate his, you know, devotion to doing those things, like climbing that mountain. Am I going to do each thing with him? No.
Yeah. What's your hope and goal and wish for your book, baby?
I hope a lot of people read it and love it, and then
listen to the audiobook.
And listen to the audiobook for sure, which is a great one. But that it makes you feel your own stories that you were carrying shame around, you were carrying guilt around, that you thought were weird. Some of the things that are kind of blocking your own heart, that it unlocks it, like that it's a permission slip. Like, I've gotten messages from people being like, oh my God, this helped me so much to just look into my own stories and my own experiences and to let them be liberated. So
it helped me so much. It really did. Okay. I mean, I wish for everyone to have a friend who chronicles their life, like the life that you lived with them and the life that I didn't live with you. But it is a really beautiful gift to see you own your story, honor your life, you know, in a way that is artful. Because I was there and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was at that event, at that John Travolta event at Stella Adler where we got stuck in the elevator. And yeah, in fact, it was a scene for a book or a movie. It was artful. You know, it wasn't just a day that we should, you know, take for granted. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
I
hope
also-
somebody sends it to John Travolta and
Oh,
he
yeah.
remembers that time.
Me too. It was really fun. Or the times where you sort of you chronicle your like sexual escapades and professional maybe losses, where I would, you know, be there holding your hand through those tears. And it's a beautiful experience. And it really reminded me that like our lives are precious, you know, that we are living a story, like a movie, a book, you know. You made it so that I could reflect on my own experience, like you say, without shame.
Yeah.
Without shame, in fact, with pride.
Exactly.
That I
and
lived.
that's the thing. It's like, it's not about my stories necessarily. Yes, they're fun and inspiring, but they're really meant to be your stories because you've also felt ashamed. You've also woken up hungover and afraid and not sure what your life is going to look like or whatever.
And you know what? Looking back, I can laugh at it.
Yeah.
And I can honor it. You know, like I could say like, oh, that's a scene for a book.
Right.
You know, that's a teachable moment.
Right.
That was fun. That was youth. And anyway, I do hope that everyone reads it.
Yeah.
Or listens to it. That we continue to follow and cherish your journey. And maybe your next book is all about
Being a mom.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Any parting words, or did we do it?
I think we did it. I feel pretty good.
Congratulations, buddy. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for doing your work in the world.
They love you.
Thank you, as always, for listening to the Mom Curious podcast. My name is Daniella Rabbani. I am your host, and I would love to continue this conversation at Daniella Rabbani on Instagram. And if you'd be so kind to rate and review, share this podcast, I would be just really grateful. Catch you next time, every Tuesday on the Mom Curious podcast, produced by Hoff Studios. You can find them at Hoff Studios on Instagram as well. All right, have a great day.